Hey, Mizzou fans, Gabe DeArmond here, coming to you with a little bonus chatter on this Thursday afternoon. We're going to do this going forward on Thursdays or Fridays, as long as Missouri remains in playoff contention, in the playoff picture. The fun part about your team being involved is that all these other games across the country mean more. Like, there are games, Michigan USC, normally I can't imagine you would care about. You should care about it this weekend. And I'm going to get into why as we go through here. Again, this is just kind of games I've picked out that can possibly have an impact on Missouri. It goes without saying. Missouri, hey, this becomes a little less important if you don't beat Alabama. We are looking at this through the lens of what best helps Missouri get into the playoff. Obviously, to get into the playoff, Missouri needs to go 10-2 in all likelihood. So that is kind of the assumption we're making here. If we get 2 weeks down the road, if Missouri loses to Alabama and then gets beat at Auburn next week, then this conversation doesn't really matter for a little bit, probably. But for now, Missouri's 5-0 and hosting Alabama with the chance to get to 6-0. And this conversation matters. As we've been saying for weeks, we're judging this team on, can you be a playoff team? Because that is, I believe, the standard right now where the Missouri football program is. So I just picked out 7 games for you guys that I think you should pay attention to. And I'm just going to kind of run through them in chronological order here, at least on the list I'm looking at. Ohio State's at Illinois at 11 a.m. on Saturday. Just root for Ohio State. Ohio State's in the playoff. Illinois is one loss away from not being in the playoff. The key to all of these games is really just reducing the number of teams that are going to be in contention for those 11 spots at the end of the year. And really, it's 7 spots because conference champs get 4. So we're just trying to get teams out of there. Look, Ohio State's making the playoff. Just have Ohio State win every week. Gets Illinois out of there. So root for that. Then we go, I'm not even doing Indiana, Oregon because I don't really think it matters. I think both those teams have a pretty decent shot to make it. I guess if you want to root for Oregon, that's cool. Oklahoma, Texas, 2:30. Some disagree. I say root for the Longhorns. I think Texas loses at least one more, and I think that gets Texas out. You need Oklahoma to start acquiring some losses, preferably one of them being to you. But again, I think it's better for Missouri if Oklahoma loses some football games and maybe isn't in the mix of, these 10-2 teams at the end of the year. I know this is going to feel bad for some of you guys. Root for Arkansas to somehow go into Neyland Stadium and beat the Volunteers. Seems unlikely to me, but you should root for it. Another SEC road underdog you're going to want to root for. Root for Florida to go to Texas A&M and pull off the Texas A&M double in 2 weeks. Again, A&M kind of the same spot Oklahoma's in. They're undefeated so far, number 5 in the country. They're piling up wins. You want them to at least have a couple losses when they come here in November, and then maybe that's kind of almost a playoff game for the playoffs. Georgia's at Auburn. Again, I root for Auburn to pull it off at home because Georgia, even if they lose this game, not out of it, but if they lose one more, then you're getting to 9-3, and that's a different deal. Auburn's not going to win enough to be in the playoff picture. Last one, Michigan at USC. Sorry, not last one, second to last one. Michigan at USC. Michigan is sneaky a team that people are starting to bring up as the Big Ten's 4th playoff team. People are kind of assuming that it's Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana. And now with Penn State out of the picture, Michigan they're ranked, I think it's 20th right now in the country, or I'm sorry, 15th in the AP poll. So they're a team kind of in that same position as Missouri. They lost at Oklahoma, but they've won since then. They could work their way into that playoff conversation for an at-large bid. You don't want that to happen. You want USC to knock them off. South Carolina, at LSU. Another one kind of like, maybe Florida, Texas A&M. Like, you don't think it's super likely, but you never know. South Carolina has some talent. LSU not great on offense. Again, LSU with a loss. All we're doing in this thing is trying to get other teams kind of in that same range as Missouri, and especially in the SEC, you're trying to acquire some losses for them. So at the end of the year, if you are 10-2 and they are 9-3, maybe you have an edge, and maybe you have a little bit of margin for error. I've said all along, I think 10-2 gets you in the SEC unless you are looking at 5 or 6 SEC teams plus Notre Dame at 10-2. Like, you just want some of these other schools to get losses. LSU certainly in that mix. So that's kind of my list of games that I think you should be paying attention to. There are some others, like some Big 12 teams. Arizona State, BYU, they play road games that they could lose, but Iowa State, same thing. But I just really don't see the Big 12 as a multi-bid league. You'll start worrying about that maybe if you get down to Big 12 and ACC, really. If we get into week 10 and we've got a 9-1 team and Texas Tech still undefeated, then we start paying a little more attention to the Big 12. If Virginia or Georgia Tech manages to get to 9-0, 10-0, then you start paying attention to that, or 9-1. Then you start paying attention to that and rooting for those teams to pick up losses. I don't think we're quite there yet. We're mostly focused on kind of that second tier of the Big Ten and really everybody in the SEC. I think you want no more than 5, preferably maybe even 4 SEC teams to finish 10-2 or better. And obviously you want to be one of them. So that's kind of how we're going to approach this thing every week. Like I said, we'll do this weekly. Sometimes it'll go up on Thursdays. Sometimes it might go up on Fridays, just depending on what the college football schedule looks like, what my schedule looks like. And again, we're going to do it as long as it makes sense to do it. I mean, if Missouri loses the next 3 games, playoff's over, and we're not talking about it anymore. And we'll kind of focus on some other things. But as long as Missouri is in contention, thought this is kind of a fun way to make the rest of the college football weekend matter and tell you guys what you should be watching. So appreciate you hanging out. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Look at everything else we're doing on the channel over on the website, and we'll talk to you next time.